A lot has happened in the past week, and that's what we're going to be looking at right now. Some headlines that caught our attention, whether it's the 10th year anniversary of, or 10th year, we're marking the 10th year of the abduction of the Chibok girls. The NLC is in the news again, or Labour as a whole, with regards to the minimum wage conversation. And of course, gunmen still attacking communities. Here in Nigeria, I'm joined now virtually by Timi Olagunju, who's a political analyst and legal practitioner. Timi, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Ebuka. It's a pleasure to see you.
Same here. I just want to start very quickly now. Yes, it's been a while. Thanks. Even if you're not here, good to see you too. I wanted to start with this conversation that the organized labor have started. They did submit a proposed new minimum wage to Mr. President of 615,000 naira, according to the Sunday Punch. And a lot of people are wondering, is that a realistic target? Yes, it might look like what should be as a livable wage, but does that look like something that could happen? And where's the money coming from?
That's a very, very tough one, you know, considering the state of the current economy as it stands. But then, you know, when we talk about these things, I like to bring a bit of evidence into the picture. And then when you look at it on a comparative scale, right? Let's look at let's not even go far. Let's look at our neighbors. In Benin Republic here, people earn minimum wage of 100K upwards. That's the minimum wage they earn in Naira, you know, in Naira form, having converted it. Now, when you look at Niger Republic, that is still trying to battle with a few things here and there, as it stands, you see that the minimum wage is around 90,000 naira, right? And so the minimum wage of Nigeria at 30,000 naira, when you look at it on a comparative scale, which amounts to about $20, does not on a comparative scale speak well of, you know, the Nigerian economic situation for the labor force. And when you look at it, this is also in context with the fact that, you know, countries like Benin and Niger that I mentioned, because they are neighbors, right? Their per capita income is much lower. It's much lower than that of Nigeria. And then the GDP. Nigeria boasts of a GDP of about $400 billion. But Benin Republic boasts of a GDP of about 17 billion, right? And Niger boasts of a GDP of about 15 billion. But Nigeria's GDP is about $400 billion. And so for the minimum wage to be much lower, much lower. In fact, if you divide the minimum wage of Niger or Benin Republic by 2 or 3, that's when you get the Nigerian minimum wage. So that doesn't seem practical. However, when you also look in context, right? The context that I'm looking at here is also the context of the general overview of the living standards, right? What you can get for, say, 100 naira in Nigeria, you might get it for 110 or thereabout in, you know, this countries, Benin and Niger, because the cost of living is somewhat a bit higher than that of Nigeria in certain places in Nigeria. So practically speaking, we need to put this into context to determine what really the minimum wage can be in practical terms. But all that I want to say is that the minimum wage needs to be a living wage, the wage that satisfies people's capacity, having worked, to meet the basic Maslow's hierarchy of need, which are food, clothing, shelter, not even to talk of other things thereabout.
It's an ongoing conversation, I guess. We're waiting for what Mr. President is going to say. But at least the one thing that we know that's been recurring as a theme for this government has been the fact that there's no money to do anything. So people are watching to see how this plays out. It is very essential, like you've mentioned, but we just all wonder how this is going to be done.
The money is there.
Yeah.
The money is there. Let them cut the cost of governance. The money will come. But anyways, sorry for that.
Fair enough. Let's look quickly now at the past week we also sort of marked the 10th anniversary of the abduction of the Chibok girls, which of course caught the attention of the whole world when it happened. 10 years down the line, a lot of these girls we hear are still not rescued, are still not free. We don't even know if there's still efforts to try and find where they are. even more jarring is the fact that we still hear almost on a constant basis of schools being attacked and students being abducted 10 years after this happened. What does that tell of, what lessons we should have learned from the incidents from 10 years ago?
The incident is a sad one, and I'm happy that you are bringing it up because this is what, the media necessarily needs to start doing, bringing up. It is not only always about sensational stories, but also reminding trackbacks of things that matter to us as a country. I think that, frankly speaking, the institution of governance seems more concerned to itself than to its citizens. And I say that because the levity in which the situation of the Chibok girls is being taken may not be as commendable as it should have been, right? What we see is a lot of private efforts, international non-NGO efforts towards rehabilitation. We also need to see it is not enough for it to be done in secret. Government work cannot be done in secret. Right? It can be, if you are doing private charity, you can do that in secret and God will reward you openly. But when it comes to government work, as long as taxpayers' money, the resource of the people are concerned, it's important that you communicate efforts that are being made, not just to ensure that the girls are gotten, but also reintegrated into society. Because the burden is now on all of us. They are a product. What happened to them is a product of a failed system, a failing state. And so it behoves on that state to do what is necessary and be seen to be doing what is necessary to integrate those young ones into society in a way that they become beneficial contributors to society. And that's my take on this practically.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's very key that we always keep that in mind and don't forget, especially the lessons that should be learned, and also don't forget the girls who are still being held. And I want to move to, the oil/economy, because a headline caught my attention during the week, and it said Nigeria is struggling to for its crude oil. I think about 30 million barrels, they said. About 20 to 25 shipments of Nigerian crude oil are seeking buyers, according to traders. And there's a couple of reasons why that is. I mean, there's a short in demand from Europe, which are some of our biggest buyers in the past. And this is very, very significant considering, the role oil plays in our economy. If we're at a point now where we can't seem to find anybody who wants to buy this thing, and all the pointers are to the fact that it will get even worse in the future with what's happening in the auto industry and electronic vehicles and all of that. This demand is going to continue to fall. Are we ready for what is coming? That's
a very, very spot-on question, and that's the same question we've always asked year in, year out. And these things are not new. You don't need to be a soothsayer, to be able to predict that these things are going to be happening. It's just about, policy projections and understanding the research and evidence that is before you. And it's sad that before now, these are issues that have been raised. We've been discussing this matter 5, 10 more years ago, that indeed a time will come when Nigeria's oil will not have significance, will not, have the necessary demand as it should be. These are conversations that has been happening both on a global, on a continental, on a regional, and on a national scale, right? So it is not a surprise. But the way we then tend to think or act like this thing is a surprise is what baffles me, right? Governance is not rocket science. And the world is becoming more of a global street rather than a global village. So in other words, if your neighbor throws a stone at your glass house, it surely will affect you. And that is the nature of the global community. And so I think going forward, we need to start looking into context at the realization that climate change is a thing. And the world is beginning to move away from fossil fuel. And also, the little that we are also gathering from fossil fuel We need to understand that it is time that we begin to look back and see how to reinvest those resources in diversified measures into areas of innovation. I like what the Ministry of Communication is doing with innovation, but that cannot work if it does not become a national agenda. One single ministry cannot do it alone if the presidency does not take it as its core duty to ensure that innovation and the drive towards building innovation ecosystem is the way forward towards diversifying the Nigerian economy. It's just the beginning, actually. It is just the beginning.
Well, I want us to try and end on some sort of happy notes because they're still linked to the last conversation we just had. We did get some cheering news that the Dangote refinery had started producing diesel for the local market. We saw a slight drop in prices of diesel, and people are starting to get excited because we hear that I think about May, fuel will also hit the market. And is there a possibility that this demand for people who are going to buy this might start being channeled through the Dangote refinery for local use? And secondly, how excited should Nigerians be for, what this means? For one, what's happening with Forex, and secondly, just availability and hopefully reduced pricing of this product?
Absolutely. It's a step in the right direction because for a nation to grow, there must be locally refining of not just crude oil, but the local refining of its products, its cocoa, local refining of its farm produce. And that is just an evidence to show that if we can begin to invest more in driving policies that attracts investments in certain sectors of the economy, right, that might significantly bring down the prices of goods than even the crash of the dollar. For example, we've seen with the current crash of the dollar, the prices of goods have not reduced any significantly. And so that tells you that, all that dollar economics is not enough to bring down the cost of living. The real economics that brings down the cost of living and increases standard of living is local production economics.
All right.
And I think that's a take for us, actually.
Thank you very much, Timi, for joining us. Looking forward to things starting to look up, at least, if that's a sign of where things might be headed. And I hope people will get inspired by that and we'll start looking a little more inwards. Thanks a lot for joining us, as always.
Don't just stand there teasing me.